Hello, if you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, with me, Sharaad, Kuttan. Joining us on the show tonight, we have YB Charles Santiago, DAP Member of Parliament for Klang. Charles, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Now, before we get into the COVID situation on the ground in Klang, I'd like to get your thoughts on the news today that Tun Dr. Mahathir's motion of no confidence against Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin has been approved by the Dewan Rakyat Speaker. What do you make of that, Charles?
Well, definitely this is a very interesting development, I must say. But I think it's good. And I think we should challenge the Prime Minister on whether he has enough support on his side. So I think it will be a very challenging May 18th in Parliament. But I also think that they will make every effort not to allow the no confidence vote to happen. So I'm sure they will work out every possible strategy in the book to throw a spanner at every point in order to make sure that the no confidence vote does not happen.
Charles, I do want to ask you, though, in terms of the kind of debate around politics in the country at the time of COVID-19, some people will say that this is kind of tone deaf as a move, that, that the country needs less politics, not more politics. What's your position on that?
Well, I think politics cannot be divorced from the reality of the country. And at this time, I think a government that is elected by the people should be the one that is providing leadership to the way forward in terms of either it's post-COVID or even trying to manage the economy. Right. As you can see, the new government that we have, or the as popularly called the backdoor government that we have, essentially is not cohesive. It's not cohesive. It's all torn into various groups. And in fact, even the state governments have no respect for them. 7 of the state governments, they refuse to follow the recommendations in opening the respective state economies and so on. So clearly, you can see that the support for this government is dwindling and dwindling very fast.
Okay, well, Charles, a couple of weeks ago, you were summoned for questioning over your alleged violation of the MCO while distributing provisions to your constituents. Now, can you tell us, Charles, how Klang residents have been dealing with not just the MCO, but also the pandemic? What's the view from the ground?
A couple of weeks ago, we were in the red zone. Klang was in the red zone. We had 180 infections in Klang. But today it's dropped to 14. So I think as a result of social distancing, MCO and so on, it was able to stop the spread. However, I think I've been on the ground for the last 45 days, almost on every other day, trying to provide food support, trying to provide groceries to people, and this far, sometimes even milk powder for children. In fact, I think this far we have provided something like support to 14,000 houses, families, I must say, though, 14,000 families so far in Klang. And the number is increasing at a rapid rate. The number of people who are losing jobs, the number of people who have not received their salary in the last 2 months, and a lot of jittery people because they are scared that when they go back to work, possibly next week, they might get a pay cut, they may be asked to take a pay cut, and what is worse, they might lose their jobs. So a lot of anxiety on the ground, that's one. And at the same time, people do not have the funds. I mean, studies have clearly shown that the saving rate of Malaysians are very poor, especially in the B40. And a B40 person saves something like 85 ringgit a month. And therefore, clearly, those families will be challenged. And we have a big number of B40 in Klang, especially those who are living in low-cost houses and so on and so forth.
Charles, can I ask you, though, to what extent have the packages that have been rolled out, the schemes that have been rolled out by the current government, have they helped your constituents? Have they been able to access those aid packages or job retention schemes, any of those sorts?
Yes, I think it has helped some people, especially those who are engaged in the formal sector, the people who have now completely gone through, completely left out of the support of the government is the informal sector. And the informal sector involves something like 5.6 million Malaysians, 5.6 million people working in the informal sector, which is about, slightly 39 to 40% of the total workforce in the country. So you have at least 4 out of 10 people who are in the informal sector who will not be able to get access or have access to the support that the government is providing.
And how do you propose to capturing this informal sector? I mean, do we actually, you quoted some numbers there, but to what extent, even if the government had the political will, how would it reach out to these people in the informal sector?
Well, I think this is where they have to activate different parts of the different layers of government in order to reach out to different people. And my experience with the Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat is that they are in no position to reach out to these people, partly because they don't have the resources, and also they don't have the people to do it. And therefore, this is where non-governmental organizations need to come in order to help the government, in order to reach out to people who have been left out of who have just gone through into the crack and unable to access government support.
Okay.
But I also must say that lots of religious organizations, non-governmental organizations have come out, NGOs have come out in order to support people who have just gone through the crack and unable to get access to the support the government is providing. But having said that, I also must point out that we have a new category of people who are now joining the unemployment ranks, and these are young people and people who have just got married. And I met a couple of them recently, and I saw some numbers which actually shows that the number of people in the categories from the age of 20 to 30, this is the largest group that has been laid off. And a young woman came to me the other day and apologized to me. We were distributing vegetables in Bandar Baru Klang, and she came up to me and said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be joining this line, but I have no choice because my husband lost his job, and therefore we have no choice but to join this line." I said, please, this food is for everybody.
Right.
Please take it. So you can see even the middle class is affected by the MCO and affected by or unable to access government support. Okay. So I think the government has to really rethink the packages and start putting another package urgently, because the 1,600 they had given would have completely finished by now. So then,
Charles, I completely hear you that the M40 is hurting as well. I just want to get a very quick response from you to find out what the perspective has been on foreign workers, especially in Klang. Are they the ones also falling through the cracks?
Well, Malaysian workers as well as migrant workers both face almost similar problems. I've met migrant workers who have not been paid for 2 months, who don't have a job to go back to. And if they don't have a job to go back to, it technically means they become undocumented, because you need to work for somebody. You need to work for somebody in order for you to be documented. As soon as you don't have a job with a particular company or a particular employer, then you don't have a job. That means technically you have to leave the country. Now, there are lots and lots of migrant workers who are just stranded at this time. I mean, really stranded. And with the course of our distribution of food, which we give to migrant workers as well, this is a challenge that they are telling us. They say, we don't know what to do. We don't know who to go to. So that is why the government's approach towards migrant workers has to change. It cannot be one based on fear. It has to be one that is based on cooperation and understanding that you need them in order to solve this problem of COVID, including COVID testing and so on and so forth. But at the same time, find an avenue for them to work, provide amnesty if they have to, or send them back to the respective countries. I think these options has to be thought through by the government.
All right. Charles, we're going to get you to stay on the line. We're going to take a quick break, but first we're going to continue this conversation in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned to Consider This.